Oh yeah, yeah, that's fabulous. Okay. Well, you know, the MSI Supreme. Oh, no, that one's because that one wasn't ready yet, huh? No stock. Okay. Well, what about the MSI Gaming Trio? No, that one's already gone. Founders Edition? No, those are gone. Well, okay. What about Asus? Oh, yeah. No, well, not. I mean, they've got like 7 different models. You don't have any? Okay. Oh, Aorus. Yeah, those are. Oh, yeah. There's no. Well, what do you have? Hmm. Zotac. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Well, it looks like we're getting a Zotac. What kind of crazy world do we live in where, you know, the Founders Edition version of this card is much more power limited than than like the OEM versions. And this is an unboxing, so we're going to unbox the box. Here's the handle and the silver, and then this thing lifts out from inside, and then it says there's nothing in there. We're just there's nothing. And we have this, and there's that, and then there's this. It's like, I don't know. I am going to register, though, because of that extended warranty, because I got burned by the Founders Edition 3090 because it died. Memory overheated, I think. Zotac includes a GPU bracket, a SAG bracket, because obviously. And then we have our power breakdown cable. 4 8-pin connectors to our new connector. That's for fun power supply. Some power supplies come with that cable, so you could use a smaller, less obnoxious cable, but hey, not bad. It's all heatsink. Actually, the printed circuit board, this printed circuit board goes all the way down to right here. The Founders Edition, I think, is even a little bit smaller. Maybe this is the Founders Edition PCB. I don't know. I saw some teardowns online for folks that got more early access. And, yeah, it's pretty crazy. So this is 3 slots and a bit. So it's going to take up 4 slots, but Zotac has strategically used most of their 4th slot for air intake. That's kind of something that makes sense. The display inputs haven't changed. They're all DisplayPort 1.4, which is super disappointing. And then we've also got our HDMI 2.1 output. So, about this power connector, PCIe 5 connector, or ATX 3.0, or 12VH, if you're looking at this GPU, you've probably heard about this connector failing catastrophically. Gamers Nexus and Igor's Lab covered this very well and extensively based on what's known right now with people's failures. So based on that and my own experience, I think that this can only happen in very limited scenarios. The key with this connector is to really just shove it in all the way, which is surprisingly resistive. Even on my Zotac card here, I really had to push it in all the way and look at it. It doesn't really help either that the pigtails are so short. I think it's more egregious to have an adapter cable that's this tiny. Look at this. This is ugly and just terrible. And because these connectors are so close to this other connector, I think that does put undue strain on the connection. I mean, look at this. This is from EVGA. This is for their 3090 Ti. This is a much better design, but hey, EVGA, they're out of the game now with these 4000 series cards. And the 3090 doesn't really matter that much because it doesn't consume north of 400 watts. And some power supplies, like this fabulous one from FSP Group, this is a Hydro PTM Pro 1200 watt PCIe 5. I mean, if you're shelling out for this GPU, you should shell out for a good power supply. FSP Group's power supplies from 850 watts up come with this cable natively, so you don't use the adapter. And there are very, very few reports of power supplies with native adapters that fail in the same way. Why is this cable different than the 3090 Ti cable? Well, it's even more watts. Well, potentially it's even more watts. But, I mean, okay, out of the box, it really doesn't use very much more power than a 3090 Ti in gaming scenarios. So the cable didn't have to be different, and in fact, this cable that has 4 connections will work with 3. It'll just limit the amount of watts. I mean, 88 FPS at 4K, just shy of 700 watts for total system power. That's what we have in our testing. It's pretty good, but it's possible to overclock this card, and then this card by itself will use more than 700 watts at peak transients. don't last a very long time. And so yeah, the 3 connector cable isn't really going to cut it. But there's also a lot of power filtering caps. Let's ramble about the capacitors and Capacitor City. Spatula City! You remember Capacitor Gate from the 3090 days? There's a lot of capacitors on the back of the PCB here where the actual GPU silicon is. I think the new design strategy for GPUs moving forward is every square millimeter of PCB that doesn't have something on it gets a filtering cap, or power cap, or a decoupling cap. Some kind of capacitor. Because there is a family of capacitors here. There's Big Bear and Mama Bear and Little Bear. It probably got the new 1 farad ceramic capacitors in here. Not really. That would be pretty cool though if you had like 0604 ceramic capacitors. That would be nice. But good lord, it just looks like a noisy mess of capacitors, and there is very little room for more capacitors. Bottom line, I think we've all collectively lost our minds. And it's not just because of the wattage and the size of the card, but also the costs and other factors. And DLSS 3 is simultaneously an incredible, awesome technology, but of practically no value the way that it's set up right now to anybody except people that have spent an insane amount of money on their GPUs. And if they have a really high-end monitor and really expensive GPUs, it's probably not going to benefit them because you don't want to run DLSS at a higher rate than your monitor actually can display. And unless you have an OLED display, your display probably can't keep up anyway. You're in that 100-ish hertz Goldilocks zone for basically every technology except OLED type technology. So that's why I say I think we've collectively lost our minds. If you just picked up a 4090 and you get an AM5 system and you got a launch day AM5 system, basically one of the ones out the gate, the system may not post when you put your 4090 in the system. Not to worry, I'll show you how to update the BIOS. Yeah, see the problem here is that AM5 launched right before the NVIDIA 4090 launched. And NVIDIA, AMD, they're not sharing notes. Get the ASRock Taichi X670. I've gone to the ASRock website and downloaded the BIOS. Notice that there's a BIOS from 1013 that says, oh, improves compatibility with a 4090. Definitely read the warning if you're using BitLocker or something like that. You'll need to back up your recovery keys because this will reset some of the keys that are in the protected area. It should automatically find the file and then say, yes, update. And if it seems like it's doing something weird, give it like 10 minutes before you touch it. Now, after it flashes, it reboots. You might think you're done, but you're not. You gotta go back in the BIOS and turn on your XMP profile and anything else that you were running because it's not on by default. And one weird thing that happened, as I was unpacking the card, when I pulled the sticker off, it's kind of got this dirty nastiness from the sticker. It still says high power consumption, but the sticky residue is kind of left on the card. A little disappointing. Alright, so what's the bottom line with our 4090? Well, I have some thoughts on the 4090 and I have some thoughts on the Zotac 4090. Those are different things. I like the 4090 software improvements, which actually helps 30 series card owners too, much more than I like the 4090 from NVIDIA. The benchmarks show this. I'm a little late with my video, but the benchmarks really are consistent with everyone else, at least everyone that wasn't unwittingly running the card at PCI Express 1.0. That's a thing that can happen on most platforms, although mostly it was relegated to the X670 platform, AMD's new 7000 series CPU. I know. I was sort of making fun of Zotac being the Z-List 4090, but it's not really like that. I mean, hey, I'm a Z-tier YouTuber, but this card is surprisingly well built. I like it. I'm not planning to get rid of it. I was actually able to overclock it and get, frankly, very stunning performance of 4K on my giant OLED monitor, but at significantly increased power, moving the total system power to over 900 watts. But I could bring up my ray tracing performance to close to with ray tracing, or without ray tracing. Zotac did a good job on their cooling solution. It is very effective even in those strained scenarios. And they have an extended warranty that I'll be taking advantage of, but you have to remember to register. Like, there's some paperwork you gotta mail in with your card, write down the serial number, get the extended warranty. But bottom line, this card, it's not realistic. It's not really available anyway, and it costs too much. Actually, it's selling for above retail in a lot of places. I mean, if you want to get a beefy card, okay, but couldn't you just get a middle of the road upper end card for half as much every couple of years? I mean, Nvidia has already stated they're going to be focusing on business and enterprise customers with this architecture. Ugh, ouch. Sorry, gamers. To me, that says the 4090 will be based on silicon that was otherwise rejected for those commercial applications. And they'll need some time to build that inventory of rejected silicon because they're going to focus on their business and enterprise customers. I mean, I guess that makes sense for shareholders. If you can package this card up a little differently and sell it to the enterprise, okay. But that kind of seems like that shafts Zotac a little bit, don't you think? I mean, I would think that the price here is just sort of set arbitrarily. I mean, I paid like $1,700, which is the low end now, but it seems like it's intentionally supply constrained. Maybe this is why EVGA walked away from their partnership with Nvidia? I mean, seems like not a great way to do business with partners, to say nothing of, you know, Zotac and other partners who have obviously dumped a lot of engineering resources into their cards to build something like this, only for them not to be available in the market. I mean, certainly this kind of thing hints at stuff that would strain a partnership. That's why I like the drivers. The drivers benefit everybody. The DirectX driver, the DirectX 12 driver overhead, for example, I've complained about that in the past, and well, the 4000 had so much horsepower, Nvidia had no choice but to fix it, and it was fixed. And it was also fixed for older 3000 series cards. So older 3000 series cards got a performance uplift if they were in a game that was losing a lot of performance due to DirectX 12 driver overhead. So yeah, the 4090 does seem to be supply limited. I mean, it's been a couple of weeks after launch, and that'll likely mean waiting a few months for other models or even competitor models that we'll see either the supply limitations ease up on just as competitors show up in the market, which would mean it was artificial all along, right? Or other models from Nvidia and competitors that perform nearly as good but cost half as much, 2/3 as much, in which case your impatience for having to have a 4090 really costs you a lot. I mean, if you spend $2,000 on a 4090, but you can spend $800 to $1,000 and get something that's 2/3 as good, and then take the other $1,000 and get whatever's next after that, it seems like you'd be in better shape. The value of the 3000 series cards that we know are sitting in warehouses somewhere is adjusting downward every day, and the faster new cards come, the faster that value adjusts downward, right? I mean, with widely available 4000 series cards, then the 3000 cards, the 3000 series cards, that would be an even harder sell for those prices. And then AMD has their 6000 cards, which are pretty good and are selling quite well. It's kind of a prisoner's dilemma for Nvidia, isn't it? They really are incentivized not to release new gaming GPUs. They kind of want to have their cake and eat it too. You know, they want to say, we're the best. But it's sort of weird because this is the only model that's available. I don't know. And then the 4080 is probably going to be the 4070. It's just some really weird stuff. I bet you that Nvidia wanted to price the 4080 at around $1,200, but with the new cards from AMD coming, and they're coming in hot under $1,000, well, that's probably not good news for Nvidia either. Nvidia's CEO Jensen did say that Moore's Law is dead and expect everything to cost more. And here we have another generation of GPUs from a competitor at basically the same price. I mean, consumers are going to notice that, right? I can't knock the performance of the 4090. It is something to behold. Just looking at the performance of the card and the generational uplift, well, it is simply stunning. It really is an accomplishment. And the power is wacky out of the box. But I can deal with wacky. And if I take it from wacky to plaid, the performance uplift is just that much more stunning. Now, I don't really care that much about power usage in a desktop scenario. The electrical wiring in my house is pretty good, but do most users? I think the answer is probably no. They don't really care as long as it runs, but at the same time, you got to draw the line somewhere. The optimal efficiency of a 4090 seems to be a power target of about 60%. And here's the mind-bending thing that I found when I was working on this video. At a power target of just 35%, you can just about match the performance of a 3090 in almost all games. Okay, there's a couple of games I need to bump the performance power target up to about 45%, but if we say 45%, you're going to meet or beat every single game scenario that I found in terms of 3090 performance. And that is also insanely impressive. Maybe Nvidia intended for the out-of-the-box defaults to be a little bit more sane. This is so interesting, I ended up working on another video about the power target. I think a 4090 in a small form factor system generally is madness, except for that one narrow use case. If you wanted a small form factor system with a 3090 level performance, then you could lower the power target. I think that would work pretty well. It'd be interesting. Now, for me, remember my 3090 died. It was running the memory at 95C pretty much all the time, and then it stopped working. And so I don't really want to juice the numbers a whole lot in a daily driver system. But the performance, whether or not you juice the power, it looks pretty good either way. I'm just personally not keen on dialing up the performance and having the card sit at 95 degrees C all day. Now Zotac, they've done a good job taming the beast, but I'm hoping that the 4080 and the 4070 are tuned a little bit better on that sweet spot of power and performance efficiency. And I hope that they can still do that with less silicon in their GPU core so they can actually sell it to gamers, because otherwise it would be more advantageous for them to not sell it to gamers in the shareholder landscape. I mean, that's what they've already said, basically. Am I just not understanding that? The architecture this generation gets an A+. 4090 is a pass there. It's really, really good. I mean, I bought one after all. And if you really want a 4090, I would strongly encourage you to check out a power supply that has a native connector for this GPU, so that you're not fooling around with the adapter cables. Just bypass that madness altogether, even though there's a vanishingly small percentage of chance that you would even have a problem in the first place. Even if it's working correctly, I don't like this. This is silly. This is less silly, but it's just too short and too much. Because it's short and because the wires are so stiff, it's just, I don't know. And I'm gonna do a separate build with this power supply very soon, because this is pretty much the perfect power supply for Threadripper Pro or other really high-end systems, because 1200 watts and it's got the power connector, and it's modular, so if you don't want to use the power connector and you just want more CPU power connectors or you want more PCIe power connectors, you can do that. That's not a problem. But that's it. That's the verdict on the 4090. I don't think it's worth $1,700. Especially with lower-end models from NVIDIA that are going to be almost as fast, especially with competitor models, especially with Player 3 entering the game. The pricing will adjust. This is not a crypto market that we're in. This is not any kind of shortage or anything like that we're in. It's just too much. Even though it's really good, and they will sell it for even more money, probably well over $2,000 for the business class equivalent. It's just weird. It's just really, really weird. NVIDIA, I think, is wanting to have their cake and eat it too, and to get mixed messages from leadership and everybody else. But the software improvements benefit everybody. That's good. And it is nice to have a flagship product. That's good. And if, you know, there is a market segment out there for people that want flagship GPUs no matter what, that's good. But don't feel like you missed out if you didn't get a 4090. If you're going to rock a 4070, a 4080, or a competitor card, I think in general, the general gamer is better off there, not here. I'm Wendell, this is Level 1. This has just been my thoughts on the 4090 and the breathtaking, impressive performance of the 4090, and specifically the Zotac 4090, which I actually like. Zotac did a good job here. I'm signing out, and you can find me in the Level 1 forums. Let me know what you think.